September 9, 1943, the Mediterranean Sea. The United States Navy observers stood on the deck of their ships, watching the sky. They saw a German bomber at 20,000 feet drop a single bomb. The sailors relaxed. From that height, hitting a moving ship was statistically impossible. The bomb would land a mile away. But then, the laws of physics changed. As the bomb fell, it didn't drop in a parabola. It sprouted smoke from its tail, and then it turned. The sailors watched in paralyzed horror as the bomb changed course in midair. It banked left, it corrected its path, it began to chase the ship. "It's alive!" a sailor screamed. "There's a man inside it!" But there was no man. It was the Fritz X, the world's first precision-guided weapon. The bomb accelerated to the speed of sound. It didn't just hit the ship, it punched through 7 decks of armored steel like a needle through fabric and exploded beneath the keel. In seconds, the mighty battleship Roma snapped in half. 1,300 men were vaporized. The age of gunpowder was over. The age of smart weapons had begun. The invasion of Italy was underway. The Mediterranean was crowded with Allied ships. Among them was the pride of the Italian Navy, the battleship Roma. Italy had just surrendered, and the massive ship was sailing to Malta to be interned by the Allies. U.S. Navy observers on nearby ships admired the Roma. It was a floating fortress, 45,000 tons of steel, thick armor designed to stop the heaviest artillery shells. High above, at 20,000 feet, a German Dornier D-217 bomber circled. The crew wasn't using a traditional bomb sight. The bombardier was holding something new, a small box with a joystick. He released the weapon. Usually, when a bomb drops, the pilot's job is done. But here, the job was just starting. A bright flare ignited on the tail of the falling bomb. This allowed the bombardier to track it visually. He moved the joystick. Radio signals traveled miles down to the bomb, moving its tail fins. "Left, left, steady," the bombardier whispered. Down below, the sailors on the Roma saw the smoke trail. They started evasive maneuvers. The battleship turned hard to starboard. In any other war, the bomb would have splashed harmlessly into the sea. But the bomb turned with the ship. The bomb, named Fritz X, was an armor-piercing monster. It weighed 3,000 pounds. It had a hardened steel nose. Gravity accelerated it to near supersonic speed. It struck the Roma amidships. It didn't explode on the deck. It punched through the deck like a bullet through paper. It went through the mess hall, through the engine room, through the double-bottom hall. It exited the ship underwater and exploded beneath the keel. The shock wave broke the battleship's spine. But the second bomb was the killer. It hit the forward magazine. The explosion was so massive that the Roma's No. 2 turret, weighing 1,500 tons, was thrown over the side of the ship into the sea. A mushroom cloud rose 3,000 feet into the air. Admiral Carlo Bergamini and 1,352 of his men died instantly. American sailors on the USS Savannah, watching from a few miles away, went silent. They had just watched an invincible ship destroyed by 2 bombs that seemed to have eyes. "They can steer them," a U.S. officer muttered, lowering his binoculars. "God help us." The Germans weren't done. They had tasted blood. On September 11, 1943, the Luftwaffe returned. This time they weren't targeting Italians, they were targeting Americans. The light cruiser USS Savannah was providing fire support for the troops on Salerno Beach. The captain, scanning the sky, saw the smoke trails. "Dive bombers!" he shouted. But the planes didn't dive. They stayed high, out of range of the anti-aircraft guns. The bomb fell. The Savannah turned hard left. The bomb corrected. It was coming straight for the No. 3 gun turret.
The men inside the turret didn't know it, but they had 3 seconds to live. The Fritz X hit the turret roof. Again, it didn't explode on impact. It used its kinetic energy to penetrate. It smashed through the turret. It smashed through the handling room. It smashed through the crew quarters. It detonated deep in the bowels of the ship, in the ammunition handling room. The explosion blew the bottom out of the ship. Water rushed in, but worse was the fire. The blast vented upward, turning the inside of the ship into a chimney of flame.
For the next week, the U.S. Navy was in a panic. They called it the guided bomb. Rumors spread that the bombs were piloted by suicide midgets or trained monkeys. The sailors couldn't comprehend the technology. But the Office of Scientific Research, OSRD, sent a team of electronic warfare specialists to the fleet. "It's radio," the lead scientist said. "They are controlling it with radio waves. If we can find the frequency, we can jam it." It was the beginning of electronic warfare. The scientists brought strange devices onto the ships. Electric razors. Yes, electric razors. They discovered that the motors of electric shavers created radio interference. It was a crude idea, but they were desperate. They needed to create noise. Every sailor was ordered to turn on every electric device they had. But would it work? Or would the next bomb find the aircraft carriers? September 16, 1943. The Germans struck again. This time, the target was the legendary British battleship HMS Warspite, the grand old lady of the fleet. The Luftwaffe attacked with 3 Fritz X bombs. The anti-aircraft gunners fired until their barrels melted, filling the sky with flak. But the bombs didn't fly straight. They danced through the explosions. One bomb hit the Warspite amidships. It punched through 6 decks. It blew the bottom out of the ship. 5,000 tons of water rushed in. The boilers were flooded. The fires went out. The massive ship went dead in the water. No power, no steering, just a floating hulk drifting toward the enemy coast. The sailors scrambled in the dark, oily water below decks, trying to shore up the bulkheads. They weren't fighting men anymore. They were fighting the ocean. The Germans cheered. They believed they had found the Wunderwaffe, the wonder weapon that would win the war at sea. They didn't know that American scientists were already working on a countermove. October 1943. A new group of men arrived on the U.S. destroyers. They didn't wear standard uniforms. They carried strange, heavy metal boxes with antennas. The sailors called them spooks. They were electronic warfare specialists from the Naval Research Laboratory. They brought a device called the XC-655. It wasn't a gun. It was a transmitter. The scientists had analyzed the wreckage of the Fritz X. They found the radio frequency, 48 to 50 megahertz. The plan was simple. Blast that frequency with noise. If the German bombardier pushed his joystick left, the jammer would scream random commands, right, up, down. It was an invisible shield. The scientists set up their equipment in the radio rooms. They sweated over dials and oscilloscopes, watching the needles jump. They were hunting for a signal that meant a bomb was in the air. They were the first cyber warriors in history.
November 1943. The alarm sounded. Vampire! Vampire! Incoming missile! High above, a German Dornier 217 released a Fritz X. The tail flare ignited. The bomb began its dive. On the U.S. destroyer USS Herbert C. Jones, the electronic warfare officer saw the signal spike on his screen. "I have the frequency," he yelled. "Jamming! Now!" He slammed the switch. Up in the German bomber, the bombardier suddenly lost control. His joystick went dead, or worse, it fought him. He pushed left, the bomb jerked right. He tried to correct, the bomb began to wobble. Down below, the sailors watched the sky, holding their breath. The bomb, which had been falling in a perfect predatory arc,
suddenly looked drunk. Its fins flapped wildly, it spiraled, it veered away from the ship. It splashed into the ocean 500 yards off the port bow. Splash! A massive geyser of water rose up, but the ship was safe. The sailors cheered. They didn't shoot it down with bullets, they shot it down with radio waves. But the Germans weren't stupid. They realized they were being jammed. They changed frequencies. They developed wire-guided versions, the HS-293. It became a game of cat and mouse. Every time the Americans found a frequency, the Germans shifted. The spooks had to build scanners that could sweep the entire spectrum in seconds. The tension in the radio rooms was palpable. Imagine staring at a green line on a screen, knowing that if you don't match that line in 10 seconds, you and everyone you know will be blown to pieces. It was a silent, sweaty war, fought with knobs and switches, while the rest of the ship prayed. And then the ultimate test came, the invasion of Anzio. The Germans launched everything they had, swarms of guided bombs. The spooks worked until their fingers bled, tuning, jamming, blocking. And they won. Out of dozens of bombs dropped, only a few hit. The rest fell into the sea, confused by the invisible wall of American electronic noise.
Late 1943. Foggia airfields, Italy. The Allies pushed north. They captured the massive Foggia airfield complex. What they found in the hangars shocked the intelligence officers. Stacks of Fritz X bombs. They looked like science fiction props. Sleek metal bodies with strange, box-like tails. But the most chilling discovery was in the control tower. An American sergeant found the control box, the Kale Strasberg transmitter. He held it in his hand. It was small, just a metal box with a tiny joystick. "This is it?" the sergeant asked. "This is what killed the Roma?" It looked like a toy, a child's plaything. But this toy allowed one man to sink a battleship from 4 miles away without ever putting himself in danger. The Americans packed the equipment into crates. Destination: Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. The reverse engineering began immediately. The U.S. Navy didn't just jam the German bombs, they copied them. Using the captured tech, America developed the ASM-N2 BAT. It was the first fully automatic guided missile. It used radar to find its own target. In April 1945, off the coast of Borneo, a U.S. patrol plane dropped a BAT. The missile flew itself for 20 miles. It locked onto a Japanese destroyer. Boom! The destroyer sank. The circle was complete. The weapon designed to kill Allied ships was now killing the Axis. But the box with the joystick opened a door that could never be closed.
Look at modern warfare today. What do you see? Laser-guided bombs, JDAMs, Tomahawk cruise missiles, Predator drones piloted by men sitting in containers in Nevada. They all share the same DNA. They are all descendants of that first clumsy German bomb that fell on the Roma. The Fritz X was the grandfather of the smart bomb. It taught the world a terrifying lesson. You don't need to be brave to kill. You just need a better microchip. The sailors on the USS Savannah and the Roma were the first victims of the joystick war. And today, we are all living in the world they died in. War changes. The weapons get smarter. But for the men on the deck, looking up at a falling star that can steer itself, the fear is always the same. It is the fear of being hunted by a machine that doesn't miss. If this story of the first guided weapon fascinated you, hit that like button, subscribe. We track the history of warfare from the trenches to the digital age. Keep your eyes on the sky.